So I am so pleased to introduce this next session. Doug Kirkpatrick was an early employee, a founding member of the Morningstar Company, which was and remains one of the biggest and most successful self-managed companies in the United States, a tomato manufacturer. Tim Griffin is the VP of Procurement at, as we discussed, Amy's Kitchen, which produces Amy's Pizzas. And Andrea Robb first came on stage at Responsive in, I believe, 2017, talking about what Airbnb, where you worked at the time, had to learn about cults and what we could all take away from cults to apply in healthy ways in our own organizations. So excited to hear from you all. Thank you for coming onto the stage. Let's give them a responsive welcome. Stand up, please. It's my excuse to get you standing. Thank you. Round of applause for these three.
Hello, hello. I'm so thrilled to be here again, and I'm mostly thrilled to connect some ideas between two men I know and admire, Tim and Doug, and connect some work we did together last year and frame it up for you all. So I wanted to start with just one quick connection I'm making and frame up a little bit about how this session's going to go, and then we'll get into it. So that sound all right? All right. It's good to see friends in the audience, by the way. Hi, everyone. Some people I haven't even said hello to. All right. So yesterday, I felt like there were a lot of big existential questions floating out there, and Robin did a great job of closing out and framing some of that for us. And, and then he would say, and this is before we add the internet and AI and some of what Vivian, who I've heard speak before, introduce into our lives, which is fascinating and terrifying. So one thing when we were facilitating the unconference is I wanted to offer 2 actions and 3 ideas to get started here, and then we'll dive in. I usually am a person who leads with purpose, and I lead with vision. And I'm actually having a moment of feeling unanchored because of all of the uncertainty, and I'm a helper. So my parents have always described me as, Andrea helps people. I'm not really sure what she does, but she helps people. And I was thinking about another thing yesterday, which was, it's okay to be unanchored. I'm really glad I'm here because I need to find those connections and people and ideas to feel anchored to continue to help others. And so I am embracing anxiety right now. I don't feel good about the state of the world, but those are some ideas that came out of yesterday. 2 things, connecting with other people and connecting with the ideas and the wisdom within myself to today's context. That's what we're going to invite you to do at a little interactive moment, and those are 2 actions I am trying to intentionally take in today. So that is just a little bit of a setup of who I am and kind of how I'm feeling. So I'm not an expert today. I will be vulnerable. I am more comfortable being an expert on stage, but I really love now being someone who can put others' expertise on stage. So that's the job I get to do. And it's new for me. This is the second panel I've moderated in 2 weeks. I'm usually the guest. So without further ado, I want to introduce my good friend, Doug Kirkpatrick. Doug and I met in the pandemic. We met online almost exclusively, but he and I connected at Responsive in 2017 from afar. And I was in a time where I wanted to learn about organizational self-management. He was in a group online, and I decided to learn everything I could, and he is so generous with his time. So those of you who know Doug, he was a founding leader at Morningstar Tomato Processing, the largest in the world, completely self-managed. He was there from the beginning. And he now evangelizes how do we scale that and how do we really help people unleash themselves to do their very best work. And in this context, a $1 billion leading tomato processor that gets put on Amy's Pizzas kitchens. He also founded the Morningstar Self-Management Institute. He and I have worked on a book together recently. I forgot to put it out on the table, but just sharing stories with our vibrant friends, our vibrancy friends who do work together around self-management. He is an author of many, many books. His superpower, as I see it, is he can find simplicity in complexity. And we're going to hear some very complex ideas today that sort of match what we heard from Vivian and what we heard yesterday, but they're contained and digestible because of Doug's superpower. So you can count on that from him. Tim Griffin, industry note for him, he is the VP of Procurement at Amy's. And he is a pioneer, or Amy's is a pioneer of organic foods, 30 plus years now, I think, going up in Petaluma. He's just off a flight this morning from DC, talking to leaders, confronting reality as he then works to create the vision of the hard work of maintaining organic foods in our foods, which is not easy. And so Tim's superpower, in my view, is he balances philosophical with practical. When Doug called me to help him with this work at Amy's, and Tim asked us to come in, I thought, Doug, he just wants to do 2 whole days on leadership, like 2 whole days on Peter's work, who's a leadership philosopher. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, who is this person? He's VP of Procurement. Okay. And I was so impressed with how Tim is so deeply practical and philosophical. He's a voracious learner. And I think you can count on him today to be very real, very pragmatic, and give us the color commentary behind the concepts that Doug shares today. So that's Doug Kirkpatrick, Tim Griffin. I'm excited to be with you today. All right, so Doug, when I think of you, I think of leadership depth. And I think and there was a session on depth finding yesterday with Sam Sperlin, and I think Doug goes deep. His voice is deep, his command is strong, but he is a quiet reflector and a deep thinker. And I often think, how do you translate that to business excellence? And so, Doug, what does leadership philosophy and business excellence or success have anything to do with anything together?
Leadership depth makes the most business sense of any leadership approach, tactic, method available. Leadership depth makes business sense. As my friend Peter Kesselbaum says, how do you even decide what to do tomorrow if you haven't thought about your destination, your life, what it means to be a leader in the context in which you're operating? So that's what we try to teach leaders with the Leadership Diamond. That's what we tried to share with Amy's Kitchen. Leadership depth makes business sense. Peter says we're the first generation that has to figure out how to manage our own mutation as a species, given the disruption and acceleration technology and all the change in which we're swimming. We have to figure out how to grapple with our anxieties and turn them into positive, hopeful, productive interactions with our fellow colleagues and the rest of the world.
That's all. That's all. So anxiety is something we're going to talk about as a concept and in our bodies and in our work as leaders. So buckle up. It's going to be really, I think, timely. So thank you. Tim, you came to Peter Kesselbaum's work, and I often feel like right now, as I was preparing for this talk, that we had a 4th chair here. It would be Peter, and we have been mentioning Peter today by first name, and we're in a moment we'll reveal why he feels so familiar to us. But we're talking about Peter Kesselbaum, and he died nearly a year ago. December a year ago. Yep. And you're going to learn a little bit about his life. He lived a long, hard life that we are all going to draw wisdom from. And I asked in our preparations, I said to Tim, how did you ever learn about Peter Kesselbaum? Like, it is not a name that moves in the circles of my leadership development craft. And yet, the more I talk to you, I find there's a breadcrumb of learning. So tell us a little bit about how you found the breadcrumbs to Peter.
Sure. I guess about 5 years ago, I just got kind of discouraged with leadership and management, both like the peers and folks I work with, but even more so myself, like skeptical that how I was showing up every day and how I was leading was that the values that I held deepest were translated into like how I showed up at work as a leader. And so I just got curious and just started doing some research. And so kind of two roads converged. I knew about Morningstar. I got really curious about self-management. I talked to the CEO of Morningstar, and he said, you need to talk to Doug. So I spent some time with Doug. As you said, he's really generous with his time. And during that conversation, the leadership diamond sort of came forward as this text. And then meanwhile, through my own reading, I had known about Peter Block from my management consultant days. And then he also wrote this book about stewardship that also had these themes of how do you break patriarchy in the workplace and, through collaboration and partnership. And then I really loved that book. And then I found the second book called Freedom and Accountability at Work, which he co-wrote with Peter Kostenbaum. So I kind of through two different routes, I just found myself kind of converging back on this thinker. So that the thing that got me curious is at Amy's, which is really had a people-centered company. It's part of the owner's beautiful couple, just deeply committed to values-driven business. And we had a period of pretty bad engagement at our plants and in our corporate offices. And that sort of was what kind of brought me to that curiosity. What are we doing wrong here? I'm at Amy's because for one of the main reasons it's a company that was aligned with my values. And here people at work were not enjoying their day-to-day. So this came as a really great tool. As you'll find, we talk about the diamond in a really simple way for me to understand and to build myself and my team as a leader. And it became a really great tool for improving engagement and talking about hard things. So.
All right, so let's get into it. I realized no one gave me a clicker, so can we advance the slide? Because I'm going to turn over storytelling hour and teach hour. Let's talk about Peter's work. Thank you. And then let's talk about, Doug, I'm going to turn to you, this diamond and what is in it, because it'll help, I think, contain this conversation for everyone. And here we are, the infamous Peter.
Let me ask a quick poll of the audience. How many here have had a blinding flash of instantaneous insight that informed the rest of your life? Has anyone had that? Okay, fantastic. I'd say most. Peter had two. The first one was when he was 6 years old. He went to a parade with his parents. He grew up in Berlin, and he came face to face with Adolf Hitler on parade. And he described that as the most searing experience of his life, looking into the face of evil. And he knew at that moment that his life was going to have significance and importance. So then flash forward several years. Peter's family fled Germany just ahead of the Holocaust. He grew up in Venezuela under the tutelage of Presbyterian missionaries. And he was very intelligent, so he went to Stanford at the age of 16 in the 1940s, and he studied math and physics, but he gravitated toward philosophy. And so he got a master's at Harvard and a PhD at Boston University, and he taught at San Jose State for 34 years. And he was voted the best professor in the California university system, I believe in 1969. And I still hear from students of his who were in his classes. They all say that in his giant classes of 100 students, they felt like he was talking directly to them as an individual. And over time, when he was in his 30s, he went to Scandinavia, and he was in a plaza. He had his second blinding flash of intuition. He was in a plaza where there were 4 flags of different Scandinavian countries, and he looked up, and in a flash, he knew what leadership should look like. And so he came back home and he prepared his model of leadership, Kostenbaum Leadership Diamond, and then he left academia. And he decided, I have to take this to organizations, leaders, and businesses around the world. So in the 90s and early aughts, This tireless 70-year-old traveled everywhere in the world. He worked with some of the biggest, most important companies on the planet: IBM, Novartis, Volvo, Korean Shybowls, AstraZeneca. The list is endless. And he solved huge problems with those CEOs that were going through agonizing turmoil. And he shared this diamond philosophy wherever he went. And I still hear from people that experienced those works and days with Peter. And you can go to his website, peterkestenbaum.com, and read the testimonials from those people. But Peter developed this diamond. I met him in 2013. I invited him to come to a Morningstar Self-Management Institute symposium. He came. He was charming, gracious, informative, delightful to be around. We became best friends. So he's my best friend. I spent many hours at his home in Carmel, engaged in deep conversation, many hours on the phone, learning as much as I could from him. And very sadly, we lost him last year at the age of 96. But he never retired. He worked his entire life because his life was infused with meaning and purpose, as we heard from Vivian. So I love him, I emulate him, I think the world of him, and he has tremendous gifts to give to leaders today in terms of the theory and the practice of intentional leadership, some of which Tim was able to use.
So a word, I wasn't going to share this, but one thing that you have taught me, Doug, is we talk about what's the ROI on leadership and how do you measure it? And both of you are, I think, leaders who follow this idea of one metric. So before we introduce the diamond, Doug said, really, it's just followership. That is it. Like, do people follow you? And now there's a lot of complicated moves behind leadership, but that's the metric. And I often think about the simplicity in that and the story you just told about Peter and how many people loved and followed and kept with them. So, and you were one of his #1 followers, and so we're going to learn more about how you ingested his wisdom now. So will you take us through the Kestenbaum Leadership Diamond?
Okay.
You're on.
So this is the diamond, and the starting point of this diamond is the bottom. It's courage. Aristotle tells us that courage is the starting point of all leadership. It's the leadership attribute that makes all other leadership attributes possible. So we start with courage, and courage is about doing things that may be uncomfortable but necessary. So are you willing to defend people who aren't in the room? Are you willing to take stands on issues that are unpopular? Are you willing to speak to a leader 2 levels above you and tell them a hard truth that no one else is willing to articulate? Courage is the essential starting point of all leadership. And then the top of the diamond, if courage is about your inner strength, your inner will, your inner perseverance, ethics at the top of the diamond is about other people. So ethics is about caring, kindness, compassion, nurturing, support, encouragement, and empathy. It's about love in the workplace. Can love actually be a norm in the workplace? Do we care enough about other people that we have an ethical heart for their well-being? It's also about right and wrong. So we don't lie, cheat, and steal, and we don't tolerate people who lie, cheat, and steal. Why? Because it's evil. And if we're ethical, we don't tolerate evil in the workplace. And then we've got a couple of other points on the diamond. The left side of the diamond is reality. Reality is about consciousness of the terrain upon which you're operating. What are your constraints? Budgetary constraints, time constraints, energy constraints, resource constraints. network constraints? What are they? Well, but what are your opportunities as well? What are the opportunities in front of you around which you can coalesce and form networks and build toward? What are your capacities? What's your level of energy? What's your state of emotions? What's the emotional state of your team members? Ethics, or reality, is very much about understanding very clearly the terrain upon which you're operating and having no illusions about that. It's a very hard-nosed sense of actual reality. And the right side of the diamond is about vision. So if reality is the current state of things, vision is about a desired future state into which you can invite people, not coerce them or command them, but invite people to join you on a journey toward. What's this future state that I'm envisioning that I can articulate and get people interested enough to follow me on a journey? That's really the 4 points of the diamond, but what's the ultimate destination? The ultimate destination is that of greatness. And what is greatness? It's doing meaningful work in an ethical manner. Meaningful work in an ethical manner, making a difference in the world, achieving something that can last for a long time. Peter talked about, toward the end of his life, he talked about what he called the immortality project. It doesn't have to do with a theology or spirituality. It has to do with creating a legacy that will last beyond your lifetime, that will have an impact on the people in your life and the communities in which you operate. What can we do to create greatness? And greatness is inherently good. It's something toward which we should all aspire. Because what's the opposite of greatness? It's mediocrity. How many of us want mediocrity for ourselves or our children or our colleagues or coworkers or our organizations? Nobody. So we pursue greatness because it's inherently good, and it's based on these 4 points of the diamond. And these things are called polarities because it's the inner strength balanced with the outward concern for others, and it's the current state of reality balanced with a vision of a desired future. So we balance these things. They could be called dilemmas or predicaments or paradoxes, but Peter calls them polarities, and that's the job of every leader, to manage the polarities in one's work life. That's what makes leadership so complex, because we have thousands of these polarities to deal with as leaders, short-term, long-term, internal, external, collective, individual, objective versus subjective, thousands of them. And so in order to manage the complexity, we have to understand the simplicity of the basic structure of leadership that's embodied in the leadership diamond.
That's all, guys. That's all you need to do. It is big, and like I said, there's a constraint to it and complexity. I'm going to have you talk about what happens in the tensions in a moment, but I want to turn to Tim and ask, after a couple of days of working these concepts with your team, last May when we were with you in Petaluma, in your beautiful offices, I might add, they have a gorgeous place to do their work together. Tim, I'm curious, how does this stay alive? Talk to us about the complexities you run into day to day and how this is constraining or containing the complexity and the hard work of leading and doing the work you do as a team, procuring organic food.
Yeah. Well, I imagine any of you that work in business know there's in your businesses like a persistent tension just based on what you do and the complexities of the marketplace in which you compete. And so just like at a big level, I found that this particular tool is super helpful in sort of helping frame and anchor with the reality that those tensions and challenges are meant to be there. They are there by design, and how we relate to those tensions and show up in those tensions is what makes us succeed or great leaders or not. So I know for a company like Amy's, we are a procurement function. As anyone who knows procurement, there's a lot of pressures on cost, supply assurance, inventory management, and so Amy's is no different. But meanwhile, we are a very hyper-constrained supply. So those of you who eat organic know it's a single-digit percentage of the food supply. So right off the bat, we're working with 5% of what's available. Then we have really high quality standards. We have really high sensory profiles we look for in our ingredients. We buy every kind of ingredient. If you know Amy's, we've got 150 SKUs, and we make every ethnic cuisine that you could imagine, and we do it gluten-free, and we have vegan options. We have allergen-free options. So we have designed in our business model to try to create a really great product with very unique ingredients in a very competitive landscape. So that just by design, and to do it in a way that allows the company to be profitable. So for my team, that tension's always there. It's there every day. How do we meet all of our stakeholders' unique interests and be true to who we are and deliver to the purpose of Amy's to make it easy and affordable for everybody to eat every day? So I have one particular example where we had a recall risk the last year. One of our main suppliers was inspected by the FDA. Their plant was shut down, and overnight, one of our most important suppliers, we could no longer use their product. And so all the inventory we had was gone, and we could no longer pull orders from this vendor. We're talking about like an event that literally could have put the company under because this particular product went into a lot of items. And my colleague on my team that managed that particular category, was just really stressed, high anxiety, really frustrated. Partially because as she was trying to help the company respond, lo and behold, the quality systems don't go away, the sensory requirements don't go away, the concerns for organic fraudulently that limit the regions we can source from don't go away, and yet we need to solve a problem today. And so, we were in a room, and you could just tell she's just really frustrated, really, really struggling. And, we did the diamond together. She was there in that training. And so first, we've got context. Having those kinds of shared context really help. And in this particular case, with courage, I started on the reality piece, which was, this is really hard. I know that you're struggling. I know that our systems aren't designed to be able to make this easy, and it's going to stay uncomfortable for a while. So I wasn't trying to fix it, wasn't there to be the savior, wasn't there to tell her it was going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. We have some real challenges, and it's going to be tough for a while. So let's just start there. And then it was sort of working our way around, right? So let's anchor ourselves. I hear in this particular moment a desire to wish the world was different. And in this experience, we've got this opportunity of seeing that our current systems are really vulnerable to this kind of an event. So let's hold that vision together. I want to help you create that and use this as an opportunity that is not going to save us today. We are not going to be able to create that new future. That's the Stockdale's paradox. Let's be honest with what we're facing today. I can hold that vision with you, but we got to come and anchor ourselves in what do we do right now? So then it comes to that place of courage, right? What do we need to do today? What can we take action on today with our partners in quality and our partners in R&D? What's the message we can bring forward? What's the hard conversation that we don't want to have that we can to help us move forward? And how do we do that like in ethics? These people that run our quality teams, they're trying to protect our customers, to keep them safe. Our regulatory teams are trying to keep people safe by making sure we're sourcing from places. So these folks have a mission too. And so it's not an us versus them moment. We've got to respect their humanity, the work that they try to do every day, and we've got to come in this together as colleagues. It's not an us versus them moment. And so how do we be courageous in partnership with these folks and find solutions together? But just by doing that, it's just sort of like, it doesn't make the problem go away. Unfortunately, the leadership diamond does not make tension go away, but it's a way that I have found to just can bring the temperature down in the room and just kind of help clear the clouds a little bit and get to a place where we can move forward with the tension.
And did you get through that time?
We did, although I'll add an extra to the story.
The company did not go under.
Yeah, it did not go under. It was actually a pretty incredible success story. But this particular team member, after the fact, was, really worried about leaving Amy's, but she kind of got into a place where she didn't necessarily want to work here anymore. And she was one of our highest performers. And I eventually went and just also was to just tell her it was okay for you to leave. We're going to be okay. I don't want you to leave, but like, we'll get through. If this isn't the place for you, also let me help you find your next opportunity. I'm going to partner with you to help get you where you want to go if the way we work doesn't work either. So in the end, this person actually ended up, we navigated that situation, but helped her find a new job because she just ultimately decided in her reality, she had to make a courageous decision to choose a different place. And it's been really hard on us, but it's also sometimes, we've got to be able to do the right thing for our people, even when it's hard. So
It's a pretty amazing story, even with good and not great endings. You're finding them. Just this morning, I want to turn to Doug, and then we're going to turn to you to do some personal reflection on something that Doug's going to share, which is making visible what happens in the tension. So we just heard a story from Tim about, vision, reality. We want to do the right thing, and we want to keep this vision of Amy's alive, and we have to deal with some realities that could tank us. So it's like incredible pressure. So Doug, I'm going to have you take us through what happens in our bodies and minds and what's available between these tensions. A little more language to give the audience to start doing some exploration on their own. So we're going to start with free will.
Yeah, this is the starting point of the entire theory of the leadership diamond, and human beings have free will. We are walking, talking freedoms. And unfortunately, too many leaders and managers don't recognize that, but we are walking, talking freedoms. We know we have free will because all of us in this room today are here today, and we could have chosen to be someplace else or in a different session, but we didn't. We chose to be here because we made a choice, conscious choice. So we have a free will, and we are free to choose. We're free to choose our responses. We're 100% responsible for our circumstances, and we recognize that in the people with whom we work and in ourselves. That's the underlying starting point of existential freedom and the leadership diamond. We appreciate that and understand that. The second point, already talked about a little bit, and that's the idea of polarity. Polarity management is the job of every single leader. And as Peter said, every job that can be automated will be automated. The only jobs that will remain eventually will be leadership jobs. And they will be leadership jobs in which we will have to infuse leadership into every product and service we provide. As Tim described in his story, he helped his colleague become a leader and make a choice that maybe was good for her at the time. And that's what ethics is all about. It's about mentoring, coaching, teaching, training. It's about sharing our networks widely. It's about massive generosity and giving away your gifts and small sacrifices yourself in the service of something larger than yourself, in the service of greatness. So managing polarity is the job of every leader, and that's what makes life so complex.
Word of the day.
Yeah, word of the day, polarity. Let's talk about anxiety. Anxiety, as Peter notes and as Aristotle noted, is the fuel for courage. It is a permanent condition of the human condition. It's never going away. We can try to medicate it, we can try to ignore it, but it's never going away. So what we need to do as leaders is, as the Navy SEALs say, we need to embrace the suck, and we need to recognize anxiety as the permanent condition that it is, and channel it in ways that propel us forward and help us make progress, and don't cause us to become neurotic and paralyzed by the existence of our own anxiety. And so, unfortunately, many people don't embrace the anxiety that they're never going to avoid, and it hurts their context and their ability to cope. But when we channel it properly, we have courage. It's a small voice inside that says, you know, you really need to speak truth to power. You really need to tell that leader that they're doing something that's on the ethical boundary and they need to rethink their approach to something, or standing up for someone that's not in the room, or being unpopular in the positions you take. So can take a number of forms, but anxiety is the gasoline for courage. We need to embrace it and utilize it and channel it. And then the other concepts that Peter talks about extensively are what he calls transcendentalia. The transcendentals, the things that we need to focus on and elevate our line of sight just a little bit toward, because they're kind of the ultimate questions of what it means to be a human being. How many here have asked yourself in the last year or so, what is my destiny? Anyone ask that? Okay. That's a very powerful question. So when we start to ponder these things, and we can't necessarily define these things instantly at the spur of the moment, but they're things that we need to think about: consciousness, mindfulness, infinity, our destiny, our inner selves, our inner thoughts, the things that no one else can see except you, are infinite. We can go back in time 1,000,000 years. We can go forward in time 1,000,000 years. We can travel through all of interstellar space in our minds. It is absolutely infinite. And we can access that to give ourselves imagination and consciousness and resilience and all the things that we've been talking about throughout this whole conference. So incorporating all these ideas, free will, polarity management, anxiety, and transcendentals, those are kind of the surrounding concepts of the diamond itself.
So there's a lot to chew on, and I want to take a moment. I promised some reflection and connection to yourself and some of these thoughts and ideas. So we're going to take 1 minute, and the reason I want to do this is so much of what the way you show up, Tim, as a leader, and the way you did in that story, and Doug, the work I know in you is that, and the work that I'm currently doing to remain helpful to others, despite my anxiety about the world and AI and the future of work, is to reflect on my own internal state. And so I would ask, with all of the gift of time of this last day and today and listening to this, what is going on in your internal state right now? So I'm going to give you 1 minute, and I'm watching the clock back there. And I just want you to think about what's going on for you. Let's acknowledge where there's conflict or tension, or where there might be light and future time traveling and thinking about infinity and possibility, and just name those things for yourself. So you can do it alone, you can write it down, you can write the diamond. And whatever that is, you put it on paper or expressed it, and you can bring it into your unconference session if you want. And now I want you to turn to one person next to you, and I want you to reflect either a leader you know who's struggling with some of these tensions that you're thinking about. It could be leaders who are not struggling with these tensions and you wish they were. If we turn on the news, I think we see examples of the lack of internal work. Just share one thought that's come to mind. And this is my promise to you, to connect with another person and support each other with these ideas and these thoughts. So I'm going to give you 1 minute each to just share what's on your mind. And 3 of us are going to connect up here too. So you have a total of 2 minutes. I want to make sure there are time for questions. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure you're not alone with your thoughts, because we just spent this morning with Vivian's incredible brain and thoughts and inspirations, and we're now building on that. And I just find this anchoring need, apropos to yesterday's keynote, to just go to self and connect ideas and connect with others is just so important in this time. So we manage our own anxiety.
Like this to life, some of those concepts, and then breaking through just the way a lot of folks have just grown up in work. And, and so that in itself is like a polarity that's really difficult.
Thanks for that. I'm going to go to the audience now, and that's a great lead-in to what questions do you have here? Because you have two experts and a practicing leader in these concepts, but also this idea of self-management and responsive organizations. I just want to invite questions from the audience, and I think I can talk this way now. All right, so questions, and I'll repeat it back for Doug or Tim. Yes, Tatiana.
Sure. The question was like, how do you in an organization sort of take steps that move you towards that reality where folks are stepping forward and managers are letting go? I mean, at first it starts like most things, it's an inside job. So me just really noticing in myself all the ways that I show up, wanting control, thinking that I know how to do things better, not allowing people to have the dignity of their own process and learning, over exaggerating the stakes of given decisions. So first modeling it with my team was like the starting place, and to ask them to be honest with me and try to create the conditions where folks could be like, you're doing it, like I want it. And then also like having honest conversations with the team around what do you need to feel like you can really own this. Sometimes they're invisible, they're beliefs that aren't true. They think that they need like sign off for direction where they don't. And in some places they actually have constraints that prohibit them. And so I think that's where it starts. And then just having a small group. We have a learning circle that I've worked with for years of just a few select leaders that have just want to nerd out with me on stuff. And just getting a couple early champions bought in on something. And so that's kind of where we started to incubate some of these concepts and then more organically allow it to sort of percolate as opposed to a big command and control. We did the training, but the training came at a very particular time when it had already started getting a little bit of a groundswell of interest in the topic. So, I mean, that's how it worked for us.
Well, if you're not going to get into psychotherapy or psychiatry, and you're just a manager and you're being asked about people's anxiety in the workplace, then what Peter Kesselbaum and Peter Block have said in their latest book, Confronting Our Freedom, is that you confront people with the reality of their anxiety and ask them to recognize it and do something with it. So someone comes to me as a leader and says, I'm really anxious about this new project. What can you do about it? Nothing. What are you going to do about it? It's really confronting people with their own freedom, which exists, and it is a reality, and it's 100% their responsibility to deal with it. They're going to choose whether to, go farther into therapy or just process it themselves or start a group of people to share with each other, but people have to choose their response.
We're narrowing in on time and final words of wisdom, but I see a very excited hand in the corner. So I just want to offer, if you do need to break, we will not be offended. But before we do close out, one more question. No. I can say no because I think I've seen many people engage this at a team level. And if the leader's done the inside job, then it can proliferate. Then you deal with the reality of the organization. But would you guys add or edit that at all? So start inside with your team and organizational. That's a lot of the work that I think has to happen anyway, and we have to start somewhere. So these are our starting points. And like you said, the timing of when the system's ready. I think I do a lot of work with Alan Silva, who's up in the corners as a leadership coach, and he will embrace any reality and just go, oh, they're interesting. I'm an optimist. I'm like, I think they're great. And he's like, we'll find out. And he will help us manage conflict exists in us, in our teams, in the company, in our country, in our communities. And so more and more I'm finding just to embrace the anxiety. And then we just met with a leader this morning. We're like, we think we're getting to a point where we're done with your team because they keep conflict alive, because they are good with arguing. And those are the signs that I didn't used to look for, right? Not copacetic, they're better, they're performing. They're performing with anxiety and conflict in a productive way. So that'd be my final words of advice. Any final thoughts before we go? One or two words of wisdom about how to take these concepts into life and outside tomorrow at work.
Yeah, I just want to speak. Well, I can make my comment to that is that I think for me, part of the reality is accepting that evil persists. There's folks that show up and will always show up in ways that are counter to how I know me and myself and my team or folks at Amy's, even the way that they believe the world should work. And so part of it is also just accepting the fact that we live in a world where there's challenge, there's evil, there's selfishness, there's all these real difficult realities that are part of the human condition. There's no perfect organizations. It's always going to be messy. So even as we aspire towards this better future, I don't have any belief that someday Amy's everyone's going to be living the diamond perfectly and we've solved the resolution, and because I think the diamond teaches us that's not actually true too. So that's the great irony of it all, is that we choose to do this because it's what we can do. We hope that we can lead from the inside and inspire more in this direction, and we accept that the world is going to keep challenging us, and we're going to see a whole variety of ways of being and showing up, and we've got to confront that too.
I am so honored to be on the stage with Andrea and Tim and learn from them constantly. So thank you very much for that. I might tie into the panel discussion from the end of the day yesterday and also what Vivienne shared earlier. What Peter talks about, the importance of time, and most people experience time pressure as this alien protein from outside, an external kind of force and pressure that puts stress on us. And when we experience that kind of anxiety, it's really a form of existential guilt about we're not living out our authentic sense of meaning and purpose. So if we can identify that for ourselves as individual contributors, as leaders in organizations, then we can actually become time. We lose the sense of this pressure of time because we're living out our true authentic meaning as we go through each and every day and each and every week. So I just leave you with that thought. This whole conference has been a marvel in the way it's tied all these themes together. So congrats to Responsive for that, and thank you very much.